Good morning, everybody. I'm Melissa Hunter from Family Video Network, and today we're going to be talking about, like Robin said, AI and kids and responsibility. And AI is not something that's coming in the future. It's already here. Our children are already interacting with it, whether they know it or not, whether we know it or not. So we're going to be talking today to a great panel. I'm going to introduce them first. We'll let them introduce themselves briefly. Then we've got some great data and insights, a couple of products to share, and then we're going to talk about what goes into creating responsible AI for children. So I'm going to start off with you, Keren.
Hi, everybody. Keren Wong from iDEO. I'm based in San Francisco. Thank you for being here. Thank you for participating in what Robin described as, and I agree, a very important conversation. Within iDEO, which is a design agency, I'm in the portfolio called the Play Lab. It's super fun. Our secret sauce is understanding how play can unlock joy and engagement, and obviously thinking about how youth and kids are moving the needle on how we interact with emerging technology. Ages ago, we made the first digital apps for Sesame workshop, and so of course it makes sense for us to be thinking about the interactions that kids are having with technology, whether it's chat bots, smart devices, all those things. So very happy to be here and looking forward to share more.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for coming. My name is Joshua Garrett. For the last 25 years, I've worked with a company called Creativity to help toy companies around the world make toys, thousands of products, and some of the biggest, most successful toys over the last 25 years. And in the last couple of years, I've been focused as well as being Chief Creative Officer for a company called Readyland, and you'll see more about that later.
I'm Nelo Lucich. I'm the CEO of Skyrocket Toys. So we're a tech toy maker. I've been in the toy industry my entire career for way too long. We've always sort of had a focus on tech-inspired inspiration or innovation. So, you know, AI is just one of the new technologies that we're trying to figure out what new play experiences we can bring. So.
Awesome, thank you. So we are going to start off with you, Keren. I'm going to give you the clicker. We're all going to ask the clicker gods to make sure that it works. And you have some really interesting data and insights on what's already going on with Gen Z and kids. And I find this to be very, very hopeful. So I hope you all really pay attention and find this as interesting as I did.
Thank you. So Gen Z, we're usually talking about ages 13, teenagers who are coming of age, up to people who are just finishing college. And as mentioned with the Play Lab, thinking about youth, kids, and family, it's not just people who are gonna one day be using it, but they're using it now. They're the ones that are forming their opinions about your future products and services. And if anything, they've actually gotten some really interesting opinions. I say that because they were the ones that grew up with the unintended consequences of social media. They started feeling all of the angst and shame that we didn't realize would happen when you put these kind of tools into hands of kids and families when these products weren't designed for them. So we at iDEO started 2 years ago, January 2023, before most schools had created their ChatGPT rules and regulations, just doing some scanning, asking some questions, and eventually a few co-design projects. So I'll be sharing this morning a little bit about what we're learning. That question is, what if the tech-savvy generation isn't buying it anymore? We have a lot of really interesting opinions and assumptions in our heads that these are the ones that are going to be the first users and the first movers. And in many ways they are, but they're the ones that also come with the most informed opinions, not just about how badly the tech feels, how cringy some of them might be landing, but also how it's affecting their sense of humanity. Every person in this room who's creating a product, especially with emerging tech, you're kind of torn between how do we move fast to win and how do we slow down to de-risk. That's something at iDEO with any product, whether it's with Gen Z or any other customer we'd be thinking about. And so to share a little bit about what we've been doing for the past 2 years and are still doing now, we started doing some data scanning. We dug ourselves into TikTok, into YouTube, into Reddit. What were kids already posting about when it came to asking these questions? Then we started building out these real prototypes, super scrappy, just in real life use cases. And we moved toward understanding the personalities that kids wanted to interact with, including things like using role play to really get what are the emotions, what are the whys, why would you be using this, not just how, but why. And two key areas of tension. The first one is creative expression, and I'm sure we will have a lot of conversation later about how these tools are affecting our creative process. And the second one about human relationships. The interesting thing is, of course, this matters for all of us adults in the room, but we think especially coming of age. What does it mean to unlock and express ourselves? What does it mean to form friendships on the playground, online? These are things that really affect that formative process. And so just a few snapshots of all the fun ways we've been able to dig ourselves into spending time with youth and teens, everything from having them edit our Figma prototypes to acting like robots themselves if they had to give the voice of the robot or the chatbots. Here's a few provocative ones. We really put tangible expressions of what it would be like to interact with a potential AI tool. And so we ask questions like, okay, you recently had a friend breakup. What kind of intervention do you want? Do you want someone to counsel you through that process? Or do you want someone to kind of replace that friend for the time being, just so you can, back yourself out from that relationship? So by asking really tangible questions, by putting prototypes in front of youth, we were able to co-design a few insights. This one always gets all audience members. We put out a provocational expression of, imagine you could have an AI trained on your preferences, on your personalities, live your life for you. Imagine they could swipe your Tinder for you, they would have the icky conversations, or they would go through the awkward introductions, new person in school. And we heard some really interesting things. I want to go on a bad date for myself, and I want to have that bad vacation. There was a really interesting sign that being able to live life for yourself is a badge of honor. The next one here, I would prefer to give opportunities to people over technology. I think these are the ones, and again, they have seen what it's like when people feel replaced. I'll definitely share a lot more, but starting off with a few key learnings, Gen Zs value advice and perspective from lived experience. There's something about designing for friction. I'm gonna say that again, designing for friction. In our age of optimization, in our age of assuming that everything should move as fast as possible to make life as smooth as possible, there's something about the challenge, and that comes back to play, right? Why would we spend so much time to hit a ball several hundred yards away? There's something about the joy of achieving, the joy of overcoming challenge, the joy of moving through your first friend breakup or your boyfriend or girlfriend breakup that makes you into a person. And as many times as helicopter parents or as people who are designing technology assume that the smoothest possible path is the best possible path, there's some pushback there. And Gen Zs don't yet trust AI to understand the nuance of their lives. You're coming out of an age where you have a lot of conflicting opinions. There's tensions in what you like and what you say you want, and these may change 4 times a day. For anyone who has teenagers in the room, you're familiar with that. But even adults in the room, what we say isn't always what we really mean. And so how would we expect something to be just trained on this data that we're giving it? That's an opinion I'm hearing a lot. And the last one, Gen Zs greatly value experiences that help them reflect, imagine, and express themselves. I was thinking and talking to a lot of really wonderful creator tool makers, and there's something beautiful about the unleashing of potential and power that we're seeing, but there's also a desire to grow in your craft, to become better as you work through. What might some of the onboarding journeys look like when a young child has access to these tools and you're now asking them to define themselves as a creative? What are ways that we can lean into other aspects of what it means to be a person and what it means to tap into your creative expression and what the stories you really want to tell? How can we be surrounding them with these opportunities? A few opportunities and side-by-sides here. I can go into them more later. But yeah, I'm also just gonna throw this up here. We love co-designing with youth. We think it's important. Everything from talking to them to creating hypotheses, less concepts based on what they're telling us. Getting, again, as I mentioned, into the emotions of the interaction. Again, not just the technology and what it can do, but why, and how does it make you feel? And from there, being able to identify new ideas. I'm just gonna say we love working on these tools, and here's some more information about what we're writing. Everything I've just described, we are happy to share with all of you because we believe it's important that other people, adults in the room, decision makers, should be able to access these principles. Let's talk a bit more later.
Thank you so much. So we're going to pass it off to Josh, and you're going to share what you're doing at Readyland and how AI is involved in this process.
So that's Readyland, which currently is a set of 5 physical, old-fashioned books that kids can read with currently an Alexa. And it brings the books to life in a way that has never happened before. They talk to the characters, they play games, they make choices on adventures, and every time they go through the book, it can change. And it's had a remarkably positive feedback from users. We're like 4.8 stars on Amazon, and everyone loves this new experience. And as you look at it, I think you can imagine like we could use AI in a whole lot of different ways in Readyland. And one thing I just want to mention is that a lot of people, when they think of AI for kids, or in general, they think of chatbots. Like that's the expression of AI. But AI is a tool. It's a powerful tool that you can use in many, many different ways. And what we always want to do is focus on the product, not the technology, right? So for Readyland, where AI currently is for us, we are not going to use it to generate content that goes to kids without us knowing what kids get. We are not going to use it to have synthesized speech say things that we're not aware what it's saying. But what we have found is incredibly powerful in the tool set of AI is we can use it to much better understand what children are saying to us, right? So in the examples that you see on a page, there might be 20, 30 things, and a kid can describe what they're saying. And before AI, we have to think of all the different ways a kid might say what they're looking at and try to understand so that we can give them back the content that we as human experts have created for them. In some models we've been testing with AI, where before, for example, in a book, you have 2 bats in the distance in the sky, a kid might have to say, bats, I see bats. Now a kid can say, those little things in the sky, those little birds, they can say it in all sorts of different ways. And with AI, we can then funnel them to the content that we much better understand they're trying to get to, and then give that to them. So that's our focus on AI right now, but there's so many different ways to use AI, but the big thing for me and for us is that AI is a new technology, and there's a certain magic in that. That magic is fading fast, and you can't focus just on the technology to provide magic to kids. You have to focus on the product and the experience, which the technology can help improve.
Absolutely. And now we have Nelo. And Nelo, you brought a friend too, didn't you?
Yes, I've brought my friend Poe here. So this is Poe the AI bear. So this is a product that we've been working on before there was AI. So we've had this concept around our company for more than 5 years, trying to come up with a way to allow kids to make stories themselves and choose what they put into their story. So before there was AI, we looked at a lot of different ways to do it, and it was just not really practical, or it wasn't cost effective. And so when AI really became, generative AI really became in the forefront, it just gave us an opportunity to do something that we had really been wanting to do. So this product has been an incredible amount of work. Like, working with AI is a daunting task for a product that's purely generative. So our product is generating live content for kids, and we have guardrails around that to sort of rein in what gets in, both within the AI itself and then on top of that in our systems. But we control it from the input side and the outgoing side. So if we control what the child is able to put into the story, that greatly improves what comes out. So, since there's no Wi-Fi here, we'll have to pretend like this is a live demo, and I'll kind of walk you through what the app would do if we had Wi-Fi. So first, obviously, because it's generated on the fly, we can do voice, and the app localized in over 30 languages, so people in every country can pretty much use Poe. First thing, we take some very basic information from the child, their first name, their age, and their birthday, only to be used for recognizing their birthday and things like that. We don't use the information or pass it to the AI for any other thing but that. Obviously, pronouns. Then When you come to the main menu, we try to keep it really simple because we know that there's some circumstances where parents will be doing this for their kids and then making stories and using it as bedtime stories for their kids, and there'll be other older kids that'll be using it themselves. So we wanted to keep the interface very simple. So the bear's obviously dynamic. His firmware can be updated. He can be, on the fly, be adjusted. This is kind of showing your story library. So after you create stories, they're yours, and you'll have them in your library forever. The bear himself Poe can hold about 20 stories, so you can choose what you want to load into your bear's library. And now the process of actually creating a story. So first, you choose a genre, which I clicked too soon, but I could go back actually. Maybe not. So you choose a genre of a story. So if you want a mystery or an adventure story or whatever kind of story you want, then you get to choose from over 500 different characters, icons, cities, places, plot ideas, kind of anything you can think of. So you can imagine what the story is you want to make, and pretty much the stuff you need to make that story is in our system. Yeah, and then you'll choose all your icons, So I'm going to choose a bear, Poe. I'm going to put Poe himself in the story. We'll choose a helpful robot to be his sidekick, also the protagonist in the story. So you can choose who the protagonist is and who the antagonist is in the story by selecting them either green or red. As you can see, that's the hacker. He's one of the bad guys in our story. This story is obviously a little bit older, seeing that, I'm a 10-year-old at heart. I'm going to make a story that appeals to me, so you're kind of getting the type of story that I would make. We have an evil magician. So after you do all that, got one more guy, mind control, and then you're going to get a location. I added CES Las Vegas just for this event, just so you could see what he would do. So the actual content that I'm going to play, then you hit next. He's going to generate the story. This might be sped up 2 times, but it probably takes about 15 seconds to generate the text and audio. So we're going to simulate a streaming experience here. So let's figure out how to go. This is an actual story that I made with that exact prompt, not modified. Hold on. He's been on sitting for a long time, so.
The Mysterious Mind Control Caper.
Okay, that's this title.
Hey there, Nelo. It's a bright and shiny January morning. The perfect time for another story. Did you know that in Las Vegas, where our story takes place, they have a gigantic Ferris wheel called the High Roller? It's taller than the Statue of Liberty.
So he'll pull in real-world events and places based on the setting that you choose.
What if I told you there's a mystery waiting to be unraveled at the Consumer Electronics Show? There's excitement in the air, and Poe is on the case. We'll need to keep our eyes peeled for clues and outwit some sneaky characters. What do you say we jump into it? The story is called The Mysterious Mind Control Caper. At the bustling Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, inventors, tech enthusiasts,
So I'm not going to play the whole story, but I'll play a couple parts just so you can see how it's going to weave these things in.
Poe, the ever-curious AI story bear, accompanied by his quirky sidekick, a helpful robot named Bebop. As they wandered through the exhibits, Poe noticed something peculiar. Attendees seemed to be moving in a trance-like state, their expressions blank, as if their minds were somewhere else entirely. Bebop, with his digital sensors, detected an unusual frequency emanating from a nearby booth.
So I'll stop it there, I think. So as you can see, whatever you put into the story, it'll do a really good job of weaving all those things together. So we're controlling the input by limiting the icons you can choose and the types of characters. We also give it age parameters. And so if you put in that you're a 5-year-old, you're going to get simpler text. You're going to get simpler words, lower vocabulary, less word count. We limit even the icons. So if you're a younger child, you'll get less icons that are more appropriate for younger children. And just it's pretty amazing. Like, we got into this product with an expectation of what the product would be, and like how it actually came out is like kind of like wow. Like it's a really good use. Like he was talking about that there's good uses for AI where it can do a good job, and things that are creative and where it's an extension of me. I could choose what I want to put into my story, and it's going to weave those into a story. So it empowers children, and it's actually a really cool play experience. Like we had some panels test it with like large groups of children, and they picked it, like a couple of wards picked it because they said like the 5-year-olds liked it because they would make like a simple story, and the 12-year-olds like it because they could put every crazy thing they could think about in their story and get a really
That's
weird
how
story.
I played with it. I just hit as many buttons as I could at random, and it made a story out of that. It was really cool, really cool.
Yeah, and obviously if you choose things that make sense, you'll get a more sensical story, whereas if you put weird stuff in there, you get weird stuff. But both are fun, So that's Poe.
That's Poe. And so now we'd like to shift a little bit in, because there's so much experience and knowledge here on this stage that I think will be really helpful to all of you to talk about how you guys and how you're seeing, Keren, people use AI as a tool for design of products intended for children. Anybody who wants to jump in on that?
I'll jump in. So we use AI in development, and I think the best way to think about how we use AI is as a really great brainstorming partner, right? So if you have experience with brainstorms, one classic way to brainstorm is just throw out a lot of ideas. No matter how crazy, just throw out a ton of ideas. And a great thing about, I use ChatGPT, and you can do this with Claude or Gemini or whatever, but is just to say, give me 20 ideas about this. It's important to note that never yet has it given me an idea that I'm like, that's the answer. But it gives me ideas that sometimes spark further thinking in the development group, and it actually has been very beneficial that way. And another area is in terms of creating stories or rhymes or lyrics or jokes. Give me 10 jokes about an owl. They're usually really bad jokes, but they will spark.
You get one that's good,
maybe
right?
get one that's okay, but then
Yeah.
it'll spark, something about an owl to make a joke about that I hadn't thought of. It's the fact that its head moves around in 360 degrees or something like that. So that's kind of how we use it.
Yeah, we use it in a lot of similar ways. I mean, it's not going to give you reliably good answers, but it will give you a list of reasonable options. And so it's really good for brainstorming, for trying to name things, there's all sorts of, we use it for coding. I don't know, AI is a really, really powerful tool. It just is some things and isn't other things. And I think in the kind of environment we're in, there's a lot of anti-AI backlash, and it's kind of thought to be maybe more than what it is.
I would build on what my panelists have just described about lo-fi prototyping. And so at iDEO, every time we try to do a design research interview or observation, we want to put something tangible in front of who the participants are to really get them to react to the heart or the core of whatever that concept is. So similarly, after ideation, you sometimes want to bring in a sketch or a little more fleshed out idea. And it's not the idea that makes it to the end stage. However, it's something that's just tangible enough. So whether it's generating an image, for us, you saw we actually just generated a bunch of scripts asking, again, for instance, if you were to interact with AI, what would it be like? And AI did a really good job impersonating itself in some cringy and weird ways. It also tried to do did a pretty good job of sounding very natural. So we put all those scripts in front of kids and youth and had them read them aloud and try to respond to be like, oh, I don't really quite like how that landed, or that sentiment felt weird. Again, but as everything my panelists have described, it's for the sense of provoking, for the sense of getting a bit more tangible and helping people spark those ideas and responses.
And I just want to add one thing that you made me think of is I do a lot of art direction of artists, but I am not an artist. And I found it incredibly helpful, the image generation, to make storyboards. And I can sit there and generate images, and I'm like, yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Then pass it on to the real artists, who then can much better understand. So as a kind of translation tool from thoughts to images, it's been very, very helpful.
Yeah, I love that you all speak of it as a tool, because that's what it really is. It's, Years ago, people were worried about kids and the internet, and how they were going to use that. And some of those things have come true. But in reality, to them, it's just a tool to access the world. It has not become embedded in their brain. So I'd like to shift a little bit to talk about, so we talked about how people are using it for design. Can you tell me a little bit about what guardrails exist in AI when you are talking about designing for children?
So I think that at least ChatGPT has some internal guardrails if you say the content is for children. The reliability of those guardrails is a little bit suspect, but you'll definitely get a tighter control over any sort of inappropriate content, any sort of sexual content, offensive content. And even in general, though, I think all of the AI companies realize that sort of moderation is a big part of their challenge, because they're trying to keep an image that it can be relied on to do customer service or to be a corporate-facing front for your company. So it's a lot of the same challenges as being safe for kids. They want to have control over what it does, but being that it's not always the way it works is just not controllable, there's definitely a degree of randomness to it. But they have two layers of checking, where they have a second AI that's reading the content of the AI that generates the content to just check it for content, which actually helps with the moderation piece.
I'd like to mention, I think that when we think about safety for kids with AI, there's multiple levels of what that means, right? On the one hand, it's, does it drop F-bombs all the time, right? I think that's pretty well covered at this point. But there's a whole other aspect of, is the content it's generating, and I'm talking about generating content for kids, and at Readyland, we don't do that at this point. But when you do generate for content for kids, is your product such that it's critical that that content is accurate, or is it more like Nelo's solution, which is fantastic, that it's about creativity and exploration? If things are a little wonky, that's fine, right? But I think just even a month ago, if you, in all the major chat services, you asked how many R's are in the word strawberry, they'd all say 2, right? So if you're building a product that's really focused on accuracy and information, it's a huge hill. If you're building a product that's focused on fun and exploration and creativity, you don't have to worry about that so much. So again, it's really about the product and the tool set, and then what you have to do to make sure it's appropriate.
Something that Josh said, which totally resonates with how we function at iDEO, is about bringing the human first and not letting technology dictate the types of use cases. And so something that comes to mind is, as I was researching previously, just general online safety for children, kids and youth these days, the word stranger danger, I'm sure many of us grew up with that phrase doesn't apply. We're used to talking to strangers online on forums. It's very normal to ask the public for opinions and questions. So I think something I would throw back as an opportunity is, how do we think about what it's like to talk to a potential stranger, which might be a chatbot, which might be a product, which might be any sort of service? I think there's a need and a hill about reframing what it's like to interact with an unknown. And that's, I think, on us as parents, designers, educators, caretakers, to really think about our relationship with the technology.
Do you have something?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, to the design side, there has to be a human element at some level, and there has to be a concept that's the AI is driving that is more than just the AI. And I think that's a mistake that people make, is there's a new technology and people will put it in every single product, whether it makes sense or not. Your refrigerator and your toaster and your air fryer, and every product has it. So I think it's use case first, figure out the product you want to make, and then find the technology that is going to help you facilitate that feature or that sort of play pattern.
Right, and I think it goes, as parents, we're looking for ways to grab a few minutes here and there, and things like Poe and Readyland, and they can give you those few minutes. But at the same time, you need to stay aware, you need to know what's going on, you need to still be in the area. You should never really be leaving our children alone with technology if we can avoid it. So taking it from there was something on one of our calls that I thought that you said, Keren, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but talking about the things that Gen Z are enjoying doing, and probably younger generations are too, with AI. And it was really about creativity. It wasn't so much about talking to a chatbot. Can you sort of elaborate a little bit?
Sure. So stepping back a few paces, in general, I think there's a lot of alignment around productivity. If something can help me organize my calendar, if something can help me with my essay a bit, right? There's a lot of things about saving time. But then I guess the question is, where do you want to save time on? Do I need to speed up this part of my life and process for the sake because I can? And so when it comes to things like creativity, it was cool, as I think my panelists have described, about having a thought partner. But there's something very different when your kid hands you something and they're so proud of it because you put it on the refrigerator. They own it. They know they made it. There's something different, and I think we still need to explore when it comes to who gets to feel like they've been accomplished, who gets to feel that sense of reward because they work through the challenge in that problem space. And so a lot of teenagers are, again, creating incredible content with these video editing tools, video generator tools, script generator tools, everything. It's so fun to watch where their ideas get to come out into reality. So at the same time, there's a bit more nuance to ask which parts, though, they are trying to shortcut through. I was just talking to some colleagues in the entertainment industry, and it was really cool to be like, yeah, the things that make movie editing at a large studio much faster, we now have access to. That is incredible. It feels much more democratized in that way. But when it comes to owning the final product, when it comes to refining an idea, there's still, as Nelo described, that final human touch that makes it yours. And so I'm seeing a lot, and I'd love to hear other people's opinions on where that nuance comes in when you get to feel like this art is mine.
That is a good question, and I know that is, my son is 21, and he could care less for chatbots, but creating videos, and it is an interesting space, because as we just heard when Nelo and Josh were talking about how they use AI in their development, it was a tool, but the end product, the AI didn't create that end product, right? It was all of the people that work at your companies who came together and came up with the ideas and refined the ideas. So I think that's just really interesting that technology can only take us so far in the creative process, and then they still need us. They still need the human beings. We're still valid.
Yeah, I think one of the errors that people make in making products for kids is first of all, a lot of people who are technically minded see a new technology and they say, hey, this is magical.
Shiny.
Oh, it's going to be magical for kids. Now, first of all, kids don't see magic in the same way that grown-up engineers see magic, right? And secondly, what's really important is the magic of technology fades really fast. I think kids are already getting used to AI. There was a time when having an iPhone and touching a picture and watching it move under your finger was mind-blowingly magical. It's not magical anymore, right? So I think the critical thing is in designing these products, you need human beings who have the experience of developing for kids what is a fun, compelling, magical thing that has nothing to do, when the technology is gone, is it still fun and magical? I think that's critical.
Yeah, and I think the tools extend your capabilities for kids. Depending on your level of skill, you can use AI to greatly expand what you're able to do yourself creatively. Like if you're an artist, but you want to program your toy somehow, or your thing, or your art exhibit you're making, you can use the AI to generate the code. So I think it gives you capabilities that are a little bit beyond that are your core skills to sort of enhance the overall.
Totally. One of the principles we had up there was enhance my abilities, don't replace them. They're coming to age and forming their identity. They're coming to understand their passions. Let's give them space to do that without just eliminating all those fun, meaningful, life-formative aspects.
And I think Gen Z is, to some extent, just from my own observations, they're not technophobes by any stretch of the imagination, but they do have really good boundaries around where they want the technology to intersect with living their lives. And sometimes I think it's better than mine, honestly. I really do. In the few minutes we have left, I'd just like to open it up to you to ask you all, where do you think AI can take parents and children going into the future in terms of expanding creativity, imagination? Where are we going? Don't everybody answer at once.
That's a tough question.
I
I have a crystal ball. Hold on, let me look.
Getting back to my theme of making great products, I do think it enhances the ability to make better or different great products for kids. You know, our books, for example, a kid can read it 20 times and it's different every time. That has never been available before. A kid can talk to the character in a book. That has never been available before. And that's not, you know, we're not using AI so much, but voice recognition and computer, everything, all these technologies expand the possibility for a new type of experience. And I think when designed well by people who know how to design for kids, that can actually make the world a better place for kids.
Yeah, and I think it can also, for toys, you know, the dream is always to have your toy feel alive. It's a challenge to do, and I don't know if we're there yet, but I think there's a world where you can start to weave in interactivity to toys in a way they feel much more alive, and the content feels fresh, so you're not hearing the same sounds 100 times in a row. You know, you're actually getting interesting content every time you play with it.
I think something I think a lot about is deepening the relationships within existing communities and families. And I was thinking about, you know, a really great parent, a great teacher knows their child and knows what they're interested in. I think the big bucket, we call it personalized learning, but imagine if that personalized learning journey was something that the family could go on together, right? This week you like manatees, and you want to go to the very end of that rabbit hole about manatees, and maybe it's just because they like the shape of their bodies. We don't know the color of their skin, but like being able to access that endless library of possibilities and prompts, and being able to take that journey together. Because a lot of times I feel like I hear from a lot of parents, or especially as they reach the older age, you know, I just don't know my kid is thinking anymore. And imagine this opportunity to go on that journey of discovery together. I do think there's a lot that can be enabled by this very generative and explorative technology.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And I think that's a really great note for us to finish up on. And you know, the message that we've tried to communicate is AI is a great tool for creativity and imagination. AI can be safe for children, and the people that are creating products that in some way use AI, whether it's in the design process or the actual output process, there's a lot of deep thought that goes into the creation of these products. And I'd like to thank all three of you for sharing your expertise. Will be available side stage if you have any questions for them. And I think there's a link somewhere to everyone's information. There it is. There's the link. Thank you all so much. Thank you guys. I really appreciate you sharing all your thoughts today.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
Thank you.